Welcome back to the Morning Blend. Well, there's a difference between having a nickname and being called a name.
Name calling, especially with kids, can be fuel for bullying. Joining us now is the appropriately named nickname guy with more on what parents and kids can do to shake a nickname that you don't like. Good to see you again, John.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
It's nice to have you here. Okay, so nicknames in particular, there's a difference, right, between a nickname and name calling. Can they be one and the same, or are they very different things?
Some of both, actually. I mean, a nickname is something that you might get that sticks, and it could come from the playground, and just having a name that somebody gives you might not necessarily be a nickname that creates a problem for you down the road.
A lot of times when you're here, it's kind of lighthearted. We talk about nicknames. There's some great stories that you share about how people got their nickname. But sometimes it can be very painful. It can be something that kind of shapes somebody and affects their life in a very negative way, right?
Right, absolutely. And, you know, that's part of this whole bullying trend. I mean, what really caught my attention, when I started this project a while back, I knew that the whole bullying and the playground thing was a subset of it. But when you start hearing and reading and seeing about these kids that are committing suicide, I mean, that really wrapped me around the axle, and I said, you know what, this is something really important that people need to know about. And it's an awareness thing like anything else, right? I mean, people don't know what they don't know. But I'm telling you, some of these things that happen on the playground that seem innocent enough can literally change somebody's life and be a lifetime struggle for them, absolutely.
Well, one of your most popular blogs that you wrote about is one that was nicknamed or titled Fatso.
Right.
And that comes down to the whole point of that sometimes you get these names on the playground, other places, that almost fuel this bullying. I mean, I remember in high school, we actually called a girl Tonto, which in Spanish means stupid. Now, we said it actually because we liked her. She was very smart. She was like the smartest girl in our class. But the nickname itself wasn't really that nice. And it stayed with. You know, it's something that people called people. So can these names fuel bullying for maybe somebody who isn't popular or who isn't the opposite of what their nickname is?
Oh, absolutely. And that's part of the challenge, is that it's a very complicated thing. I mean, you look at it on the surface, but it really gets triangulated. And what I mean by that is, if a kid has a pejorative nickname and it's out there, the bully might jump on that, right? And ironically, the bully, so to speak, has the most self-esteem and the least self-esteem simultaneously. They have enough self-esteem to be the bully, but really they have a need to defeat other people. And that's a control issue. And so, yeah, when those nicknames are out there, the second piece of the participation is the other kids, right? I mean, you have an opportunity to stand up for Fatso. And you know, you either do that or you don't. And so to stand up for Fatso is to stand up for yourself, right?
That's
to a
an
certain
interesting
extent.
way of looking at it.
Well, yeah, it really is. I mean,
yeah, because it's hard for kids to have enough confidence to do that.
Exactly, and they triangulate it, because what they might do is say, boy, Fatso, I'm really sorry people call you that. And then 10 minutes later say to their friend, yeah, can you believe we call him Fatso? You know, so there's an issue for them too. And there's a relationship between hope and ethics. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. And what that means is that hopeless people become unethical.
Interesting.
You know, one of the things I thought that was interesting when you talk about kids is that you had found a statistic that half of kids, when they see bullying happening, they say they just watch to see what happens, or they do nothing. And that's half of kids. Why do you think that apathy exists with a name calling?
That's a great question, and I think I've said this for a long time. Today's compromise is tomorrow's personality trait. Okay? Whether
Explain that.
Yeah, well, either your diet or, so you have a decision to make. You're there, you're participating, you're observing, you're viewing, and the bully's just called Jimmy Fatso. You passively condone it by not saying to the bully, don't call Jimmy Fatso. And so you're stuck. And so if I don't stand up for Jimmy today, then it's easier to do again tomorrow. Right? And that's what I mean. Today's compromise, in terms of your own personality, becomes tomorrow's personality trait. Today's compromise is tomorrow's personality trait.
This is kind of heavy stuff, and I know
it is.
But I think it's important, and I know one of the things you've said in your blogs is that nicknames have been and will remain an intriguing aspect of our everyday culture. I mean, it's something that's very real in sports, entertainment, politics. But what if somebody gets a name that they don't like? If somebody's overweight and people are calling them Fatso, how do you shake a nickname like that you don't like?
Well, and that goes back exactly to who's participating in that. There's the teacher, there's the parent, there's the person that's given them that name, and then it's the person that's received that name. And what do they do with that? And do they have the self-esteem to overcome that? I mean, it's a huge problem. And I don't think it's something that you can necessarily program out of the schools. I mean, you have, you know, classes now around character and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it has to do with the other kids and their ability to defend that kid and say, listen, what diminishes me diminishes you. And what diminishes me diminishes everybody else. And so I think, you know, one of the great things that's lost in this culture, I think, is that sense of the common good. You know, it's just, I mean, that's what Hobbes and Locke and Jefferson and all those guys were about back in the day. And there just isn't that shared sense of the common good anymore.
We asked a question on Facebook. Can you read one of them?
Yeah, and I think this goes along with one thing that you mentioned about, you know, family names that people can get, and sometimes, you know, you might have a family name that sticks with you that you don't like as you grow older. But Jennifer asked, she said she didn't have a bad nickname, but she's curious if cutesy names can have a negative effect on kids because her 8-year-old has 2. So,
Okay.
you know, I know you kind of brought up the example of a child being called Precious or something very cutesy when they're little. Can
Right.
that have a negative effect on kids?
Absolutely, because the kid might begin to think that's all they are. Well, you know what? In this day and age, and in any day and age, do you really want to go through life being only known as cutesy? I mean, I think there's a certain devaluing there of what's really important in terms of esteem and integrity and what's really important in life. And, you know, I got to believe that at the end of the day, who would want to go through their life being known as nothing more than cutesy?
Oh, and oftentimes I think some of those cute nicknames stem off your big eyes or personality or your looks.
Right.
And so you might, again, focus on that surface versus some of the things that are inside.
Right.
Here's the information so that if you want to follow the nickname guy, John Leaf, you can find him at nicknamestories.com or on Twitter at the nickname guy. You can follow him there as well. Tell him your nickname story because you love hearing them, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Go out to my website. I have a specific section of my website dedicated to bullying and nicknames, and I'm happy to come and talk to your school and keep this dialogue going because it's all about awareness.
That's
Absolutely.
great. I feel like we
Great
could have
topic.
talked about this even longer.
Forever.
We
Thank
could,
you so much.
and we can. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay.